It's time to chuck your beads or your clouds in the bin, because if you want a granular module, the Miso Cornflakes I think is my new favourite. It does a lot of the same things that clouds does, but you can spread the grains across like harmonic ranges rather than all firing at the same time, and because of that you can do some really amazing stuff, and you can sort of create pseudo polyphony, which is what I do in this patch I'm about to sort of talk you guys through. If you sort of have a go at this patch and you make some music, please sort of tag me in on Instagram, or you do a similar technique using different modules. It's at Niven Music. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. And in the meantime, let's just jump in and I'll show you what I've done. First, I'm going to play you this sound in the context of the rest of this patch, so you can see how I sort of fit it into a beat. And then I'll break you through how I made it and how I created this sort of fake polyphony using the cornflakes, which is what cornflakes is really good at, and the kind of thing I'd always sort of try and achieve with the clouds and never quite be able to, because it just doesn't quite have the same functionality. So here's this whole loop. So what's going on here? If I take out the rest of these parts, what I've done is I've got this really simple drone sound. It's just the bootler, both of the oscillators an octave apart, and then I'm modulating slightly the frequency of one with an LFO, and I'm also modulating the wave shape of both of those just to give it a bit of movement and stop it being too static. That's going directly into the cornflakes. So here you can just hear the bootler oscillator coming straight through the cornflakes, and then here you can hear what the cornflakes is actually doing. So what's going on here? I've got play and record pressed so that the bootler symbol is continuously being recorded into the cornflakes 40-second buffer. Can then use the position, set the grain size and the diffusion to spread out when those grains happen in time next to each other. Either they can be simultaneous grains, or it can go like grain, 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 grain. I can then sort of repitch. And I can also use the harmony knob and the distribute to create chords. I've got the quantize section on. At this point, when I bring the bootlers back in by turning the monitor on, so you can hear the cornflakes repitched grains sort of moving against the original bootler drone. So that was really cool, but what I really liked is the way you could get different chords by moving this harmony knob. So I decided to sequence that. So I'm going to just play the sequence. And then if I set the harmony in a nice place, that's a really nice pad, you know, maybe I'd want to add some reverb. And there was actually a point where I was just sort of playing that against the beat. But I did want to take this a step further. So what I did was take the outputs from there and I took those into the Make Noise LXD. And then I used an envelope from Maths to trigger this sort of CV inputs of both. So I'm using both channels of the LXD in stereo. So here's what that sounds like. Take some of that reverb off. You know, you can play with the envelope, get some really cool effects. At this point, you know, I was ready to start putting some extra element. Felt like this really sat a bit better against the rest of the beat. So I brought in some vocal chops. And then I wanted sort of a bass line as an alternative to this sort of pluck sound. Whole track and performance starts to come together. You know, maybe I bring this back in, make it a bit wetter. Yeah, so there's another technique. I hope you can see how the cornflakes is really different from clouds because of the harmonic stuff it can do, and the way it can re-pitch like clusters of grains, can do some really cool textural percussion stuff, which I think I'll talk about in the next video. And if you've enjoyed this video, of course, please like and subscribe.